The night sky was dark like wet stone. Cold wind pushed through the tall blue grass and made it hiss like a warning. Evan Cole moved slowly, one careful step at a time, keeping low under the crooked trees. He knew this land now. The black ridges, the thorn vines, the shallow pools that hid sharp rocks. He had learned it the hard way. He had survived it by being patient, by being quiet, by thinking one move ahead. He checked each trap as he went, the way a soldier checks his rifle. The first was empty, the bait gone. The second was sprung but held only a ripped scale from some small lizard. The third was untouched, shining with dew under the moon. Evan frowned. Something had been moving through his area, cautious and clever, something that watched. He felt it at the edge of his mind, like a shadow that refused to be still. He reached the last trap just as the wind shifted and the storm began. It did not rain at first. It groaned high and thin, like the sky warning them both to run. Then the drops came in a hard slant, cold and heavy, striking his jacket and face. He lifted his arm to shield his eyes and stepped closer to the trap. A wire snare stretched low between two roots, with a simple tension trigger. He'd set it to catch a crawler or a ground bird. He did not expect what he found there. The figure lay half in mud, half on the roots, tangled in the wire. It was slim, long-limbed, and shaking with pain. The rain washed blood down one leg. The skin was pale, no, not skin. A soft sheen like pearl. The face was almost human, but not human. The eyes were large, silver in the rain. The ears were small and set high, pointed at the tips. She was not a beast. She was a person. An alien. Evan's first thought was simple. Back away. Leave. He had seen their kind in war through smoke and fire. The Varn Empire. Cold voices across the comms, clean shots that never missed. Ships like knives gliding through space. He had no love for the Varn. He had no reason to save one. The snared alien tried to rise and failed. The wire held tight around her thigh. Her hands, 3 fingers and a thumb, slim and delicate, pulled at the wire and slipped. She gasped. It was a small sound, almost a human sound, and it hit him in the chest. Evan scanned the trees, the dark slope, the grass. No other shape, no eyes glinting back. If this was a trap for him, it was clever. But he saw no drones, heard no engines. Only the rain, only the wind. He moved closer. "Don't struggle," he said. "I'll cut it." Her gaze sharpened on him, bright with fear and hate. "Stay back," she whispered. Her accent was rough but clear. "I warn you." "You're bleeding out," he said. "You warn me later." He knelt near her leg and took out a knife. Her body tensed. One hand slid toward her belt, then stopped. No weapon there. Broken strap. Her chest rose and fell fast. He cut the wire clean, careful not to nick her skin. She cried out and then bit the sound back with her teeth. "Try to breathe slow," he said. "The pain comes like a wave. Let it pass." She stared at him through the rain. The silver eyes softened for a second, then sharpened again, as if she remembered something and chose to keep it. "Why help?" she asked. Evan shrugged. "It's my trap, my mess. I clean it." He helped her sit up and wrapped a strip of cloth around her thigh. The blood was dark, thicker than human blood, with a faint glow in it like ember dust. He tied the band tight. Her jaw clenched. She shut her eyes and sweat stood on her brow despite the cold. The storm grew louder. Lightning lit the ridge and showed how alone they were. The wind threw the rain in hard sheets that cut the ground into small rivers. Evan looked at the sky, then at her. "We can't stay here," he said. "My shelter is near. Can you walk?" "I can move," she said. But her voice had a crack in it. He looped her arm over his shoulder and lifted. She was lighter than he expected, bones like a bird. They moved slow, step by step under the trees, over slick roots, across the riddled ground. Twice she almost fell. Twice he held her up. She cursed him in her language, small and sharp. He pretended not to understand and kept moving. They reached his cave as the storm hit full force. It was a tight space tucked inside a split in the black rock. He had stacked stones at the mouth to block the wind, left a narrow gap for entry, and draped a ragged thermal blanket to seal the rest. He pushed it aside and got them both inside, then set the blanket back into place. The wind dulled to a deep hum. The cave smelled like smoke, metal, damp soil. It smelled like life. He set her against the wall where he had piled soft plant fibers and a torn ship liner. He lit a small burner and fed it dry chips from his pack. Warmth spread into the air and sent steam up from their clothes. The alien woman shivered and held her arms close. The bandage was already dark. He needed to clean the wound or it would rot. Water, he said. He filled a cup from a sealed canteen and set it near her hands. She did not take it. Drink, he said. I do not trust human water, she said. He looked at the cup, then took a swallow. Now it's half Varn, he said, and gave it back. Something like a smile ghosted over her face. She drank. Evan took out his med kit. It was old but okay. He had antiseptic gel, a needle and thread, pain tabs, a seal spray, human gear for human skin. But he had used it on alien cuts before. Flesh wanted to be whole. Flesh wanted to live. That was the same for all. He cut away the wet cloth around her wound and saw the tear. A clean dig from the wire, deep but not bone deep. He washed it with warm water. She hissed and dug her nails into the liner. He worked fast and soft, hands steady, breath slow. He closed the cut with small stitches and sealed them with spray. The glow in the blood dimmed. The leak slowed. Her breath evened out. You did well, he said. I will live, she answered. She watched his hands as he packed the kit. Her eyes traveled to the rest of the cave. A coil of wire, a broken transmitter, a folded map made from bark, a rifle with a patched stock, a tin of seeds, 3 hard biscuits, a cracked helmet visor, 2 small photos stuck to the rock with resin. One photo showed a boy in a school jacket, all grin and messy hair. The other showed a ship crew standing in a line, helmets under arms, stars behind them on a station wall. She looked at the photos a long time. Your nest, she said. You keep memory like little stones. Something like that, he said. Name? She asked. Evan Cole, he said. You? She hesitated. Lyra, she said at last. He repeated it slow. Lyra. The name felt strange and simple in his mouth. He nodded and handed her a pain tab. She sniffed it, then swallowed it dry. Silence filled the cave. The storm roared outside, but inside there was only the small sound of fire and breath. Evan set a pot on the burner and made a thin soup from grain and dried meat. It smelled better than it tasted. He divided it into 2 cups and passed one to Lyra. She sipped with care. The heat put color in her face. Where is your unit? He asked. She looked down into her cup. Gone, she said. Dead or not near. The storm took our ship. The ground took the rest. He studied her. She did not look like a soldier now. She looked like someone who had crossed a desert and found water too late. But he had known soldiers who looked like that too. You followed me, he said. Lyra's cup paused at her lips. Did I? He nodded once. Trap sprung for no reason. Footprints near the ridge, light, careful, wrong for the local beasts. I felt eyes at my back. That was you. Lyra set the cup down. Her hands were steady now. You are aware, she said. Alive, he said. It teaches you? She watched him across the small fire. Shadow and light played over her face. Something unreadable moved behind her eyes. You could have left me, she said. You did not. I told you, he said, my trap, my mess. That is not the whole reason, she said softly. He looked at the photos on the wall. The storm pulled at the blanket over the cave mouth and made it snap like a flag. He did not answer her. Time passed. The burner clicked low and the cave cooled a little. Lyra lay back against the fibers and closed her eyes. Evan rose and checked the gap in the stones. No light outside now. Only deep black and the white ropes of rain. He listened for engines and heard none. He listened for the thin whine of a drone and heard only wind. When he turned back, Lyra's eyes were open again, and he caught the quick move of her hand. She pulled it back at once, but he saw what she had held. A small flat disc no bigger than a coin with a tiny blue lens at the center. A scanner. Evan stared at her hand, then at her face. She met his eyes, calm, unreadable. What did you scan? He asked. Nothing, she said. He let the silence grow heavy. He had learned in war that silence could be its own pressure. After a long breath, she said, Your face. Your pattern. Evan felt something cold pass through him, colder than the rain. He kept his voice even. Why? Her throat moved as she swallowed. Orders, she said. A habit, a habit. He did not like that answer. But he did not move toward the rifle, not yet. Instead, he sat back down and took out the broken transmitter. He picked up a wire and began to strip it with his knife, slow and steady, as if nothing had changed. Lyra watched him. The silver in her eyes dimmed and warmed like metal cooling. Evan, she said. He kept working. Yes. She took a breath that sounded like it hurt. I finally found you, she whispered. The words slid into the cave and lay between them, heavy as a stone. He set down the knife. His mind ran through every reason for a Varn to find him on this planet. None of them were good. Some were very, very bad. Found me for what? He asked. Lyra's mouth opened. Her eyes flicked to the rifle, then to the photos, then back to his face. She closed her eyes for a heartbeat as if it pained her to choose. When she spoke, her voice was thin but clear. Not tonight, she said. You will not like the answer. And if you move for the gun, I will try to kill you. I'm too tired to try tonight. Evan studied her. The storm faded a little as if it too leaned in to listen. He could end this now. He could grab the rifle, put a distance between them, lock her hands. He could throw her back into the rain. He did not. He leaned back against the wall and set the transmitter in his lap like a small shield. Then rest, he said. We will talk when the light comes. Lyra looked at him, eyes unreadable. You are a strange human, she said. I hear that a lot, he said. Her lips tilted, almost a smile. She settled deeper into the fibers, turned slightly to keep her wounded leg high and let her eyes close. The lines of pain smoothed on her face. Her breathing slowed. Evan did not sleep. He watched the blanket at the cave mouth and the shadow it made on the floor. He watched the small disc in Lyra's hand, now half hidden under her fingers. He watched the fire, which burned low and steady. He listened to the storm grind over the rocks and thought about the words she had given him. I finally found you. He looked at the photos again. The boy, the crew, the station wall. He wondered which name she had in her orders. He wondered how long she had hunted him. A week longer? He touched the rifle but did not lift it. Outside, the storm took a breath. Inside, the alien woman slept in his shelter, warm and alive, bound to him now by a cut thread and a choice he could not take back. Evan stared into the dim red glow, and for the first time since his crash, he felt like prey. The storm had passed, but the silence it left behind was thick and strange. The air still smelled of metal and rain. Water dripped from the rocks in slow rhythm, echoing in the cave. Evan sat near the dying fire, watching the wounded alien woman, Lyra, as she slept. Her breathing was steady now, though her face twitched sometimes as if haunted by dreams. He hadn't slept. Couldn't. His mind kept circling those 4 words she had whispered before falling unconscious. I finally found you. Found him. For what? He had been alone on this planet for 42 days. Since the crash, he hadn't seen another living human. The idea that someone had been searching for him, not to rescue, but to hunt, felt like a knife sitting quietly against his back. A morning too quiet, when the first gray light crept into the cave, Evan stepped outside. The world was washed clean. Mist hung low over the trees and the ground sparkled with cold dew. His traps were gone, destroyed or stolen. Something had come during the night. He scanned the horizon, every muscle alert. No shapes, no movement, but he felt watched like eyes pressed against his spine. He knelt beside a patch of disturbed soil. The prints were narrow and deep, not Lyra's, larger, heavier. He brushed his fingers through the wet dirt. Whoever they were, they moved with purpose. Hunters. When he returned, Lyra was awake. She sat near the fire, her silver eyes calm and unreadable. She looked stronger already. The wound on her thigh was closed and glowing faintly blue beneath the sealant. You walk lightly, she said. I almost thought you left. Checking traps, Evan said. They're gone. Lyra's gaze flicked to the cave mouth. Then they found us. Who? She didn't answer. Instead, she studied the flame like it might tell her the right lie to use. Mistrust in the firelight, Evan crouched beside her. You scanned me last night, I saw it. I didn't stop you because you were bleeding out. But now I need an answer. Lyra's hands tightened around the metal cup she held. I needed to confirm your identity. Identity for what? Rescue? Capture? Neither, she said softly. At least not anymore. Evan felt the air shift. What does that mean? It means, she said, meeting his eyes, that my mission ended when I got caught in your trap. He studied her face. You were following me? Yes. For how long? 7 cycles, she said. About a week in her world's time. I was tracking your trail through the forest ridge. Evan's jaw clenched. Why? She looked down at the steam rising from her cup. You will not like the answer. Try me. Lyra's lips parted, but before she could speak, a faint noise came from outside. The low hum of something mechanical. Far away but moving closer. Eyes in the fog, Evan moved to the cave mouth and pulled the blanket aside. The fog was thicker now, swirling white between the trees. The hum grew louder, rhythmic, like wings slicing air. A search drone. He turned back to Lyra. You brought them here. No, she said quickly. I told you, my mission ended. I have no link left with them. My beacon is broken, he glared. They're scanning for life signatures. They'll find us. Then we must move, she said, struggling to stand. Her leg trembled, but she forced weight on it. If they are my kind, they will kill both of us. Your own people? She nodded once. The Varn Empire cleans its mistakes. I am a mistake. Evan stared at her for a moment too long, then grabbed his rifle and pack. Then come on. The flight through the trees, they slipped through the wet grass and into the forest's deeper shadows. The fog thinned slightly, enough to see the tall silver trunks and the blue leaves whispering overhead. Evan led the way, moving fast but careful. Lyra followed a few steps behind, breathing hard but silent. Once, he looked back and caught her expression. Part pain, part fear, part something else he couldn't name. A bright beam cut through the fog behind them. The drone had found their scent. It hovered low, spinning slow, scanning the ground with a red eye. Evan dropped behind a log, motioning her to stay down. Stay still, he whispered. The drone drifted closer, scanning. A faint beeping grew faster, and it had their heat signatures. Lyra reached into her belt and pulled out a small round disc. She pressed it between her palms, muttered something in her language, and threw it into the air. The disc exploded with a burst of blue static. The drone twitched, lights flashing, then spiraled down into the mud, dead. Evan stared at her. You had that the whole time? Would you have trusted me if I used it sooner? She asked quietly. He didn't answer. A fragile truce. They found another cave before nightfall, smaller but hidden well under a ridge. Evan built a small fire while Lyra sat near the wall, her eyes dull with exhaustion. After some time, she spoke again. You were part of the human fleet near Sector 9, yes? Evan froze. How do you know that? I saw your insignia on the photo in your shelter. The same ship that destroyed the Varn cruiser Tayran. My people lost 200 soldiers that day. Evan looked into the fire. We lost 3 ships too. Doesn't sound like a victory. Lyra's tone softened. War eats both sides, human. Then why were you still hunting me? She hesitated, then said, Because you were special to them. Special? He almost laughed. I'm just a pilot who survived a crash. No, she said, shaking her head. You carry something they want. Something inside you. He frowned. What could I possibly have? Your DNA, she said. Your bloodline matches a sequence our scientists were studying. They believed it could help unlock a weapon. Evan blinked. A weapon? Lyra nodded. A machine that feeds on thought, built by ancient humans long before your time. The Varn recovered part of it. But it responds only to a human signal. You are that signal. He stared at her, speechless. So they sent you to bring me in? He asked finally. Yes, she said, voice small. Alive. And now? Now, she said. They will kill us both. You to erase the link. Me for failing the hunt. Echoes of the past. For a long moment, neither spoke. The fire flickered low, casting strange shapes on the cave walls. Evan finally broke the silence. You could have let me die in the trap. You could have killed me when I slept. I thought about it, Lyra admitted. But when you cut the wire, when you shared your fire with me, her voice trailed off. It made no sense. You were my enemy, but you helped me. He looked at her. You think humans don't help people? Not in war, she said softly. Not when it costs them. He gave a dry laugh. Then maybe we're both tired of war. Lyra's gaze met his, cautious, almost human now. The warning. A sudden crack of sound tore through the quiet. A sharp electric buzz. Lyra's head jerked up. They found the drone's last signal, she said. We have minutes. Evan packed his gear quickly. There's a ridge 2 clicks east. I saw a wrecked pod there weeks ago, maybe human tech still inside. Then that is where we go, she said, limping toward the exit. He helped her steady herself. The contact of her hand against his arm was warm, strangely alive. Lyra, he said before stepping out. If I find out you're lying, you won't need to, she interrupted, her voice quiet but firm. When the hunters arrive, you'll see the truth for yourself. The fog had returned, heavy and pale. Somewhere in the distance, multiple engines stirred, a low hum that grew with every heartbeat. Evan and Lyra looked at each other, two enemies caught in the same storm, hunted by the same shadows. They stepped into the mist together, and high above them, unseen, a new swarm of red eyes lit up the sky. The forest looked peaceful at dawn, but Evan knew better. Peace on this planet was a mask, quiet air hiding sharp teeth. Mist rolled through the blue-leaved trees as Evan and Lyra walked side by side, every sound making them glance back. Their boots sank into wet soil, leaving faint prints that the wind tried to erase. Somewhere far above, thin clouds cut across a pale sky that never seemed to end. Lyra's wound had closed, but she limped slightly. The faint blue glow under the bandage was weaker now, healing but still there. Evan watched her from the corner of his eye. Every time she stumbled, he had to stop himself from reaching out to help. She wasn't human. She wasn't his ally, and yet she had saved him from that drone. He didn't trust her, but he couldn't hate her either. The forest that listens. They reached a shallow valley filled with tall ferns that brushed against their knees. Evan raised his hand, signaling her to stop. "Listen," he whispered. There was nothing. No birds, no insects, no movement. Just silence thick enough to crush a heartbeat. Lyra tilted her head slightly, her silver eyes scanning the trees. "Something is watching." "Yeah," he murmured. "But not just something. Someone." She touched her temple, and the faint outline of her scanner lens flashed once, dim blue. "Thermal readings, 3 signatures. North Ridge." Moving slow, Evan's pulse quickened. "How far?" 600 meters, he checked his rifle. "They're sweeping the area. Looking for us." Lyra nodded. "They move like hunters." She was right. They weren't charging. They were closing the circle, slow and careful, the way predators did when their prey had nowhere left to run. The tracks in the mud. They moved fast through the valley, sticking to cover. Evan led them toward higher ground where the rocks rose in black, jagged shapes. From there, they could see further and maybe find shelter in one of the old drop pod ruins. Halfway up the slope, Evan stopped and crouched. In the mud lay a line of tracks, deep, sharp-edged, clawed. "Not human, not Varn." "Those aren't from your people," Evan said. Lyra's eyes widened. "No, those belong to hunters," he frowned. "Hunters?" "Beasts the Varn use to track targets," she said. "Half machine, half organic. They smell blood and heat. Once released, they never stop." Evan looked at her. "They sent those after you?" She hesitated, then said quietly, "After us." That was when he realized the Varn didn't just want her dead. They wanted to erase any proof she had turned against them. The old camp. They reached a rocky ledge overlooking the forest. Broken crates and burnt metal pieces were scattered across the ground. An old human supply post, long abandoned. Evan knelt beside a half-buried crate, brushing off the dirt. Inside were cracked rations, a faded jacket, and, to his surprise, a half-working transmitter. He turned to Lyra. "If I can fix this, I might reach the orbit band. Maybe get a signal to the fleet." Lyra looked doubtful. "You think they'll come back for you? Humans abandon their crash zones after 40 cycles." "Maybe," he said, "but I've got to try." He set the transmitter on a flat stone and began rewiring it with pieces from his pack. Lyra watched in silence, her gaze sharp and unreadable. After a while, she said, "You are not like other soldiers." He didn't look up. "What makes you say that?" "You fix things," she said. "Most humans only destroy." Evan gave a dry laugh. "I was a mechanic before the war. Fixing is easier than killing, but war doesn't ask what you prefer." She tilted her head slightly, considering that. "In my world, we are taught that humans build only to conquer." He looked up, meeting her eyes. "And what do you believe now?" Lyra hesitated. Her lips parted, then closed again. "I don't know," she said at last. Footsteps in the fog, a low growl rolled through the valley. "Not mechanical, alive." Evan froze. The sound came again, closer this time. He grabbed his rifle and scanned the tree line below. The mist moved in lazy waves, hiding everything beyond 10 meters. But he saw movement, a dark shape gliding between the trees low to the ground. Then another. Lyra whispered something in her tongue. Evan didn't understand the words, but the fear in her voice was enough. "They've found us," she said. The growls grew louder. Evan fired one short burst into the fog. A shriek answered him, metal and flesh screaming together. "They're not drones," he said. "They bleed. Run." Lyra said. They ran. The chase. The ground shook as the creatures burst from the fog, tall, lean things with glowing eyes and metal bones shining beneath patches of wet fur. Their jaws clicked open, lined with steel teeth. Evan turned and fired again, hitting one in the chest. It staggered, but the second pounced forward, claws slashing through a tree trunk like paper. Lyra lifted her arm and fired her wrist weapon, a pulse of bright blue light that melted the creature's front leg. It screamed and fell, writhing in the mud. "Keep moving," she shouted. They sprinted uphill, leaping over roots and rocks. The beasts howled behind them, the sound echoing through the trees like a storm of rage. Evan's lungs burned. Lyra stumbled once, her wounded leg slowing her down. He grabbed her arm and pulled her forward. "Come on. I told you to leave me." "Not my style," he said through gritted teeth. The old drop pod. They reached the ridge and stumbled into a clearing. There it was, a crashed drop pod half buried in the dirt. Its hull was torn open, but the interior looked intact enough for cover. Evan kicked the door wider and helped Lyra inside. He sealed the entry with a metal plate and dropped down beside her. Outside, the growls circled closer. The creatures were hunting by scent now. Lyra pressed her hands against her leg, whispering a soft chant in her language. Her skin shimmered faintly as if light were moving beneath it. Evan looked at her. "What are you doing?" "Masking our heat," she said. "If they can't see, they'll sniff. If they can't sniff, they'll wait." Evan crawled to the side window slit. The fog outside swirled. Shadows moved, slow and patient. The hunters were still there, waiting for sound, movement, anything to betray them. Minutes passed like hours. Then one of the beasts sniffed the air, lifted its head and growled softly. It started moving toward the pod. Evan's finger tightened on the trigger. Lyra reached out, placing her hand over his rifle. "No," she whispered. "Let it think we're gone." He met her eyes, uncertain. But her gaze was steady, calm in a way that told him she'd faced worse before. So he waited. The beast came closer, 5 meters, 4, 3, then stopped. It sniffed again, turned away, and vanished into the mist. Evan let out the breath he'd been holding. Secrets in the dark. When the sounds faded, Lyra leaned back against the wall. "We won't have much time," she said. "The hunters will return with others. They never stop until their target is gone." Evan nodded, still catching his breath. "Then we find a way off this rock." Lyra looked at him for a long moment. "There is one way," she said. "But it will cost us both," he frowned. "What do you mean?" She touched the side of her neck where a small glowing mark pulsed faintly under her skin. "This beacon, I can activate it to send a false signal, make them think we're dead. But once it's used, they will know I betrayed them. They'll send their main force." Evan's jaw tightened. "So either they kill us now, or kill us later," she nodded. "Yes, but later gives us a chance to fight." Evan leaned back, thinking. The fire in his chest wasn't fear, it was resolve. "Then later it is." Lyra's lips curved faintly, not a smile exactly, but something close. "You are a stubborn human." "Yeah," he said. "That's how we stay alive." Outside, the fog swallowed the valley again. The creature's growls faded into the distance, replaced by a deeper hum. Engines. The real hunters were coming, and this time, they weren't bringing beasts. They were bringing war. The night came fast, too fast. The twin moons of the alien world rose through the mist, painting everything in pale silver light. Evan and Lyra crouched inside the wrecked drop pod, listening to the hum of engines moving closer. The sound wasn't the wild growl of beasts this time. It was colder, controlled. Machines and soldiers. Lyra's silver eyes flicked toward the narrow window. "They've sent a strike team," she said quietly. 10, maybe 12 Varn troopers." Evan's fingers tightened around his rifle. "How long before they reach us?" "Minutes," she said. "They'll sweep this whole ridge." He looked around the pod. It was barely holding together. Cracked hull, weak power core, and no working shields. Not much protection against a trained unit. "We can't stay," he said. "We can't run either," Lyra replied, pressing a hand to the metal wall. "They've already surrounded this area. Drones above, troops on the ground. They'll close the circle soon." Evan exhaled slowly. "Then we make our stand." The storm approaches. Outside, the wind began to shift. The soft fog that had hidden them all morning turned thin and sharp, like torn cloth drifting in the air. Through it, Evan could see faint red lights moving. the scanning beams of the Varn. He crouched beside the door, setting his rifle to burst mode. Lyra moved beside him, checking the charge on her wrist blaster. Her movements were fast, practiced, a soldier's reflex. "Tell me something," Evan said, keeping his voice low. "If these are your people, why are they trying to kill you?" She looked at him for a long moment. "Because I broke my oath. That's it?" Her jaw tightened. "My mission was to capture you alive. But I saw what they plan to do with you. The humans think they've seen war, Evan. But if the Varn weapon wakes, your species will vanish in one heartbeat. I couldn't be part of that." Evan felt a chill crawl up his spine. "So now we're both targets." Lyra nodded. "Yes, the Empire doesn't forgive failure. Or mercy." Before he could respond, a faint click echoed from outside and a trip sensor. Evan's eyes widened. "They're here." The first strike, the first blast hit like thunder. The ground shook and a bright blue bolt tore through the pod's roof, spraying sparks. Evan dove aside, dragging Lyra down with him. "Down!" he shouted. A second blast followed, slicing through the wall where his head had been a second ago. Smoke filled the air, acrid and thick. Lyra crawled to the side hatch, aimed her blaster, and fired 3 quick bursts. Outside, a Varn trooper fell with a sharp cry, armor smoking. Evan leaned against the wall, firing through a crack in the hull. His shots cracked bright in the dark, cutting down another trooper who tried to flank. "2 down," he called. Lyra reloaded, eyes blazing. 8 more! The red scanning beam swept across the clearing. The Varn soldiers moved with cold precision, tall, armored, and silent, their metal suits glowing faintly along the seams. Evan grabbed a small cylinder from his belt, a homemade flash charge. He tossed it toward the door. It exploded with a blinding flare, turning the night white for a second. "Move," he yelled. They sprinted out of the pod, rolling behind a cluster of rocks as plasma bolts cut through the air where they'd been. Fire in the fog. The battle became chaos. Shadows moving in the fog. Lights flashing like stars being born and dying again. Evan fought with short, careful bursts, conserving power. Lyra fought like lightning, her blaster tracing arcs of blue fire. Between shots, Evan caught glimpses of the Varn soldiers. They were hunting in formation. 2 advancing, 2 covering, the rest circling wide. This wasn't a simple kill squad. It was a purge unit. "They're not leaving survivors," he muttered. Lyra crouched beside him, recharging her blaster from a small cell. "Then we don't give them the choice." The words weren't brave, they were steady, almost calm. It made Evan look at her again, really look. Beneath the alien armor, beneath the silver eyes, she was just another soldier who'd lost too much. A loud metallic shriek tore through the night. A Varn drone descending through the fog, its red lens glowing. Evan shouted, "Drone," and fired at it. The first shot hit the hull, the second struck the lens. The machine spun and exploded mid-air, raining fragments over them, but the explosion gave away their position. The soldiers advanced again, cornered. They retreated deeper into the ridge, finding shelter under a narrow overhang of rock. Evan slammed his back against the stone, panting. Lyra crouched beside him, blood seeping through her shoulder armor where a shot had grazed her. "You hit?" he asked. "It's nothing," she said. "You humans worry too much." "Yeah," he muttered. "We tend to do that when people are bleeding next to us." Lyra smirked faintly in a strange, almost human expression. "I see why they fear your kind," she said softly. "You don't stop." Before he could reply, a grenade rolled near their feet, small, silent, blinking red. Evan didn't think. He grabbed Lyra and shoved her behind a boulder as the grenade went off. The blast threw them both to the ground. The world turned white, then gray. When the dust cleared, his ears rang. His rifle was gone. His side burned from a deep cut. He pushed himself up, blinking through the smoke. Lyra was already standing, swaying slightly, one hand clutching her shoulder. "Evan," he followed her gaze. 2 Varn soldiers were approaching through the smoke, rifles raised. Betrayal and truth. Lyra froze. The soldiers stopped too. One of them spoke in the sharp, melodic tones of the Varn language. Evan didn't understand, but Lyra did. Her face went pale. "What did he say?" Evan asked. She swallowed. "He told me to step aside. They only need you." Evan's chest tightened. "And if you don't, they'll kill us both." For a long second, she said nothing. Then her hand trembled, not with fear, but with choice. Evan's voice came quiet, but firm. "Do what you have to." Lyra looked at him, eyes wide. "You think I'd hand you over?" "You said it yourself," he said. "You were sent to find me." Her expression hardened, something fierce breaking through her calm. Not anymore. Before the soldiers could fire, she turned her blaster on them. Blue light filled the fog. The first soldier dropped instantly. The second barely had time to react before she shot again. Both fell, armor smoking. Evan stared at her. "You just shot your own people." She looked back, voice trembling just a little. "I told you." I broke my oath. Escape, they didn't wait to see if more were coming. They ran. Through the fog, down the ridge, across the uneven ground. Plasma fire chased them, burning trees and rocks in flashes of blue and red. Evan's lungs burned. His legs screamed with pain. But he kept moving. He'd learned long ago that fear was just another kind of fuel. They reached a narrow ravine and slid down into it, landing hard. The sound of pursuit faded behind them. For a while, there was only the sound of their breathing. Then finally, silence. Evan leaned against the rock wall, catching his breath. "That was insane." Lyra gave a small, tired laugh. "Welcome to my life." "You saved me," he said quietly. She looked at him, rain running down her face. "Maybe I was saving myself," he nodded slowly. "Maybe both." Above them, the sky rumbled, not thunder this time, but engines. More ships, more trouble. Lyra looked up, her expression hardening again. "They won't stop. They can't let you live." "Then we make them regret trying," Evan said. She stared at him for a long moment, then smiled. A real one this time, faint but fierce. "You sound almost Varn when you talk like that." "Guess war makes everyone a little alien," he replied. End of the night, they found shelter under a cliffside hollow, barely wide enough for the two of them. The cold wind hissed through the rocks, but inside the air was still. Evan cleaned his wound with a strip of cloth. Lyra sat across from him, staring at the flames he'd built. Her armor was cracked, her hands trembling faintly. After a long silence, she said, "You should know the truth, Evan. They didn't send me just to catch you. They sent me to understand why your DNA reacts to the weapon. They think your kind has the same energy signature as the creators." The creators, the ones who built the first thought engines. The machines that could erase entire species with a dream. Evan's chest felt tight. "And they wanted me for that?" She nodded. "You are the last key, human. And I was the lock they built to find you." The fire crackled between them, throwing red light on their faces. Evan stared into the flames, voice low. "Then maybe it's time we both broke the lock." Lyra met his gaze, something fierce and uncertain in her eyes. "Together?" He nodded once. "Together." Outside, the fog began to thin. But in the distance, faint lights rose from the horizon. The Varn fleet descending. The night wasn't over. The real hunt had just begun. The morning after the ambush was gray and cold. Mist hung heavy over the ravine like smoke that refused to lift. Evan sat near a small fire, sharpening the edge of his knife while his mind ran in circles. Every sound, a crack of stone, a drip of water where made him flinch. Lyra sat across from him, quiet and still. Her silver eyes reflected the firelight, but her face showed no emotion. She had bandaged her shoulder with a strip of fabric torn from her own cloak. The wound looked bad, yet she hadn't complained once. Between them lay a strange silence, not hostile, not friendly, but something raw and uneasy. Both had tried to kill each other once. Now they shared food, shelter, and fear. When Evan finally spoke, his voice was rough. "You saved my life back there." Lyra looked up. "And you saved mine, twice." He nodded slowly. "Guess that makes us even." "Not yet," she said. "We're still breathing. The Empire will fix that soon." The relic and the signal after eating, they began moving again, heading north toward the highlands, where Evan remembered seeing another wreck during his early scouting. The land was quiet, full of tall gray grass that shimmered in the cold wind. Hours passed in silence until they reached the edge of a ridge. There, half buried in the earth, stood the remains of a human beacon tower, broken but not dead. The dish was cracked, the transmitter half melted, yet faint blue lights still blinked along the base. Evan crouched beside it, brushing away dirt. "I can fix this," he murmured. "If I power the relay, maybe I can send a signal to orbit." Lyra frowned.
"And invite every ship above to find us?"
"Maybe," he said. "But if I can reach a human vessel before the Varn do, we might have a chance." She watched him work, her gaze tracing every movement. You still believe your people will come? Evan didn't look up. Hope's the only thing keeping me human. Lyra tilted her head. Strange. The more I learn about humans, the less you seem like the stories I was told. He glanced at her. What stories? That you destroy what you can't control, she said simply. That you see the universe as a battlefield. Evan gave a small, tired laugh. You're not entirely wrong. The message from the sky, he spent an hour repairing the beacon. When he finally connected the last wire, the old machine hummed to life with a weak blue glow. A soft crackle filled the air, followed by static. Then per voice. This is Outpost Echo 9, identify. Evan's eyes widened. Human frequency, he whispered. He pressed the transmitter button. This is Corporal Evan Cole, crash survivor of the Trident. Requesting immediate extraction. Coordinates transmitting now. Static, then the voice again, faint but clear. Cole, stand by, we read your signal. Évêque ship en route. ETA, 6 hours. Evan's heart raced. He looked at Lyra, grinning for the first time in weeks. They heard me. We're getting off this rock. But Lyra didn't smile. Her face had gone pale. No, she said softly. You don't understand. What? If humans can hear your signal, so can the Empire. Evan froze. You mean, yes, she interrupted, eyes wide. You just told them exactly where we are. The realization hit him like a stone. He looked up at the sky and saw the faint glint of red lights forming a triangle far above. Lyra grabbed his arm. We have to move. The countdown they ran, through the grass, down the ridge, across a dry stream bed. Behind them, the sky glowed faintly as 3 Varn ships descended. Evan's mind raced. They'll land on the beacon. It'll take them time to track us. Lyra shook her head. No, they'll triangulate the signal. They'll hunt in widening circles until they find heat signatures. Us. They reached a small clearing surrounded by tall rocks. There, half covered by vines, stood another relic. An ancient pod much older than the human Rex. Its metal surface shimmered faintly with strange patterns like symbols burned into stone. What is this? Evan asked. Lyra hesitated. A creator relic, she said. Older than both our species. He touched the surface. It felt warm, almost alive. Can we use it? Not like this, she said. But inside might be what we need. Power. Evan pried the hatch open. The air inside smelled of ozone and dust. They stepped in carefully. The walls were smooth and pulsed faintly as if breathing. At the center sat a crystal sphere glowing with slow light. Lyra stepped closer, eyes wide. It's real. What is it? The heart of thought, she whispered. A core from the first machine. The one my people found centuries ago. The one they want to wake again. Evan felt the hairs on his neck rise. This is what they're after? Yes, she said. And now they'll know it's here. The barg in the ground rumbled outside. The Varn ships were landing nearby. Evan turned to Lyra. We can't fight all of them. No, she agreed. But we can use the heart. Oh, it reacts to the mind, she said. To thought, to intent. If you link to it, we might overload its signal. Create a pulse strong enough to blind their scanners. Evan hesitated. You said it's dangerous. It is, she said. The last time a Varn tried, it burned through his body. But your DNA is different. You might survive. Evan stared at the sphere. The glow pulsed faster as if listening. And if I don't? Lyra's voice softened. Then I finish what you started. I send the warning to your fleet. He looked at her, really looked. The silver in her eyes wasn't cold anymore. It shimmered like fear and courage mixed together. Let's do it, he said. The mind-pulse Lyra placed one hand on the sphere. Now you, she said. Evan touched it. Instantly, a current ran through him. Not electricity, but thought. Memories flooded his mind. The crash, the fire, the faces of his crew, the wars he'd tried to forget. The machine wasn't reading him. It was becoming him. Lyra's voice echoed faintly in his head. Stay with me. Don't fight it. He felt her mind brush his. Strange, alien, yet familiar in its loneliness. He saw flashes of her past. Varn academies, battlefields filled with silver light, a small child taken from her family to be trained as a hunter. Their memories collided, merging like 2 rivers. Pain burned through him, but he held on. The sphere glowed brighter, white now, pure and blinding. Outside, the Varn soldiers were closing in. They fired at the relic, but their shots curved away, bending in the air as if repelled by invisible hands. Lyra screamed. not from fear but from the strain. Now, Evan? Think. Push! He focused all his will into one thought. Stop them. The sphere pulsed once, and then the world exploded in light. Aftermath, when the light faded, silence fell. Evan opened his eyes. The sky was dark again, the air thick with static. Lyra lay beside him, breathing hard but alive. The relic's glow had gone out. Around them the grass was burned flat in a perfect circle. What happened? He asked weakly. Lyra sat up slowly. We did it. The pulse burned their scanners. They'll think we're dead. Evan looked toward the horizon. Smoke rose where the ships had crashed into the trees. He gave a shaky laugh. So much for subtlety. Lyra smiled faintly. You humans have a gift for chaos, he grinned back. We call it creativity. The promise as the night settled again, they built a small fire near the edge of the clearing. The stars above were sharp and cold, endless and close. Evan stared into the flames. You risked your life for me. For my people. Lyra looked at him, her expression unreadable. Maybe I was saving myself. Maybe I'm tired of serving those who believe mercy is weakness. He nodded slowly. You ever wonder if peace is just something we keep running from? She tilted her head, thinking. Maybe peace isn't a place, she said softly. Maybe it's a person. Evan met her gaze. For a long moment, neither looked away. Then, somewhere in the dark, the old beacon flickered back to life. Faint, but alive again. Lyra turned toward it. They'll come, Evan, human or Varn. This isn't over. He stood, checking his rifle. Then we'll be ready. Above them, the stars pulsed like warning lights. The battle for survival had become something greater. A war for the truth behind creation itself. And in that moment, man and alien stood side by side, no longer hunter and prey, but something new. Allies, born of fire. The storm began before dawn. Lightning crawled across the black sky like cracks in glass, and thunder rolled through the valley with the sound of collapsing mountains. Rain fell hard and cold, turning the ground into rivers of silver mud. Evan and Lyra stood at the mouth of an old ravine, the wind pushing against them like a living thing. Their shelter from the night before, a hollow under the cliff when it was gone, crushed by falling rock. Behind them, the relic chamber burned faintly blue, still pulsing with the last breath of the heart of thought. They had bought time, but not peace. The Varn fleet was descending. Echoes of the hunt even checked his weapon for the 100th time. The rifle's charge cell was half empty. His sidearm flickered weakly when tested. The only other weapon he had was a crude knife made from scrap metal. Lyra crouched near the ridge edge, her silver armor cracked and dim from exhaustion. She was tracing a pattern into the mud with her fingers, thin lines that formed a spiral, glowing faintly when the rain hit them. What's that? Evan asked. A signal dampener, she said without looking up. It will confuse their drones for a few minutes. Make them think we're ghosts. He smiled grimly. Ghosts. Sounds about right. Lyra's hands trembled as she worked, but her face stayed calm. The faint glow reflected in her eyes, giving her an otherworldly beauty. Fierce, broken, determined. Evan crouched beside her. You should rest. I can't, she said. When the Varn come, they'll come in waves. Soldiers first, drones next, then the storm ships. If the relic is still here, they'll burn the entire valley to ash. Then we fight before that happens. Lyra looked at him. Even if we fight, even if we kill them all, more will follow. You can't win against a fleet. Evan gave a small, tired smile. I'm not trying to win. Just trying to make sure they remember this fight. Preparing for war. The hours that followed were slow and tense. Together they set traps using the scraps from old wreckage. Pressure mines, tripwires, and homemade charges that Evan had learned to build back in the war. Lyra added her own designs, embedding shards of her armor that could release a burst of plasma when struck. When they were done, they stood in silence, staring out at the valley below. The rain was easing now, replaced by a dull humming wind. The air itself seemed to vibrate, the sign of approaching engines. Lyra touched her wrist, activating her scanner. 3 ships inbound, she said. Small assault carriers, Evan nodded. Good. Let's greet them properly. They moved into position, Evan on the ridge, rifle steady. Lyra crouched near the relic chamber's entrance with her blaster ready. The old machine behind her pulsed once as if it could feel the tension building in the air. And then through the clouds, the Varn ships appeared. Sleek, dark, cutting through the storm like blades. They hovered low, releasing troops in flashes of white light. The sound that followed was the steady rhythm of boots hitting earth. The battle begins. Evan waited until the first trooper crossed the lower ridge. Then he fired. The plasma bolt hit center mass and the soldier went down instantly. Before the others could react, Lyra triggered a trap. A small explosion that sent mud and fire flying into the air. 2 more soldiers fell, their armor glowing red-hot. The valley erupted into chaos. Blue and red light cut through the mist, plasma bolts ripping into the rocks. Evan rolled behind cover, firing in bursts. The rifle kicked hard, the heat searing his gloves. Lyra's voice echoed through the comm link she'd rigged between them. Left flank, 3 moving fast. I see them. Evan shouted back. He ducked and fired, dropping 2, but the third returned fire, hitting the stone inches from his face. Shards flew. Evan cursed, sliding down the slope. His rifle sputtered. Empty. Lyra leaped from cover, moving faster than he'd ever seen her. Her blaster hummed as she fired 3 quick bursts, cutting down the trooper that had cornered him. She landed beside him, breath ragged. You still alive? Barely, he said, reloading his sidearm. You're getting better at saving me. She gave a sharp smile. Don't make a habit of it when the sky burns. The first wave fell, but another arrived almost instantly. 10 more soldiers, their armor glowing with the red marks of elite units. Behind them hovered 2 drones, each the size of a small vehicle. Lyra's dampener spiral flickered and died. The drones locked on. Evan, she shouted. Get down. She lifted her arm and fired a beam from her gauntlet, hitting one drone's sensor eye. It burst in flame, but the second fired back, striking her square in the chest. Lyra flew backward, crashing into the rocks. Her armor cracked. Evan sprinted toward her, firing at the remaining drone until it exploded. Then he knelt beside her, heart pounding. Lyra! She coughed, blood bright against her lips. Still here, she whispered. Don't waste time on me. Not a chance, he said, tearing off a piece of fabric to stop the bleeding. She gripped his wrist weakly. They're almost at the relic. If they reach it, they won't. The turning point Evan stood, grabbing a fallen Varn rifle. It was heavier, more powerful. The grip was slick, built for 3-fingered hands, but he didn't care. He aimed at the relic entrance. Come and get it, he shouted. The soldiers advanced. Plasma fire lit up the ravine like lightning. Evan fired back, each shot hitting harder than the last. His shoulder ached, his ears rang, but he kept fighting. He saw Lyra drag herself upright, using the rocks for support. Her blaster sparked weakly, nearly drained. She met his eyes and nodded once. No words, just trust. Then she turned toward the relic and pressed her hand to the heart of thought. Lyra, what are you doing? Evan yelled. She didn't answer. The crystal's glow flared again, brighter than before. Energy lines ran up her arm and across her body. Her voice echoed in his mind, not through sound, but through the bond they had made. It's the only way, Evan. The heart still has power. I can use it to destroy the fleet. You'll kill yourself. Someone has to finish this. The sacrifice. The relic's light turned white-hot, flooding the entire valley. The Varn soldiers stopped mid-step, blinded. Evan covered his eyes, shouting her name. When the light faded, Lyra was standing in the center of the chamber, surrounded by a halo of energy. The air around her shimmered like glass. The soldiers opened fire and died, but the bolt stopped in mid-air, frozen. The heart pulsed once, and every weapon in the valley melted like wax. Evan stumbled backward, shielding his face. Lyra! Her voice came from everywhere and nowhere, layered and deep. Go, Evan. Tell your people what happened here. Don't let them make the same weapon again. I'm not leaving you. You already have, she said softly, and then the light consumed everything. The aftermath, Evan woke to silence. The valley was gone, scorched black, smoke rising from the ground. The relic chamber was a crater. No sign of Lyra, no sign of the Varn troops. Only ash. He tried to stand, but pain tore through his side. He crawled toward what remained of the ridge. The air shimmered faintly, a heat mirage. There, half buried in the soot, lay a single silver shard, a piece of Lyra's armor. It glowed faintly in his palm. Evan stared at it for a long time, then closed his fist around it. You kept your word, he whispered. Above him, the clouds broke open. A beam of sunlight pierced through, falling across the ruins. His communicator crackled weakly. Evan Cole, This is Outpost Echo 9, we read you. Are you alive? He lifted the transmitter to his lips, voice shaking. Barely, I've got something to tell you. Something the whole fleet needs to hear. The legend begins as the rescue ship descended. Evan looked one last time at the crater. Somewhere beneath the ash, he thought, her energy still pulsed. Part of the relic. Part of the planet, part of him. He had met her as an enemy, fought beside her as an ally, and lost her as a friend. And now, her final act would change the war forever, because Lyra, the alien who had once hunted him, had become something far greater than a soldier. She had become a legend, and Evan Cole, the last survivor of the Trident, would make sure the universe remembered her name. The rescue ship broke through the clouds like a burning star. Its engines howled as it descended, scattering dust and ash across the ruins of the valley. Evan stood alone among the wreckage, one arm shielding his eyes from the wind. His clothes were torn, his skin burned, his heart heavy. In his hand he still clutched the small silver shard of Lyra's armor, the only piece of her left. The air smelled of smoke and ozone. The world was silent except for the hum of the ship lowering itself to the ground. Its light swept across the crater where the relic had once stood, now a hollow scar that pulsed faintly with dying blue light. Evan didn't move. He just stared at it, unable to breathe properly. He could still hear her voice in the back of his mind. Calm, steady, fading. Go, Evan. Tell them what we found. Tell them what's coming, he whispered into the wind. I will. The return to the living, the rescue team found him standing there. They rushed out in clean white armor, voices sharp and full of concern. Human survivor. Identify yourself. He blinked against the bright light. Corporal Evan Cole, he said, voice hoarse. Trident crash survivor. Sector 12. They surrounded him, scanning for injuries, lifting him toward the ship. One medic gasped at his vitals. He shouldn't even be alive. Just lucky, Evan muttered. As the ship rose from the ground, he looked out the side window. The valley grew smaller below him, a black wound on the planet's surface surrounded by silver mist. For a moment he thought he saw a faint shimmer like a shape walking through the smoke, tall, graceful, silver-eyed. Then it vanished. He gripped the shard tighter. Goodbye, Lyra, he whispered. The debrief hours later, he sat in a cold white room aboard the human fleet carrier Vanguard. The walls hummed softly, lights bright enough to hurt his eyes. Across from him stood two officers, Commander Rains and Dr. Holloway, both staring at him like he was some rare specimen. Rains folded his arms. You're saying the Varn were developing a weapon using human DNA? Evan nodded. His voice was rough, tired. Not just DNA, mine. They said I was the key to something ancient. The heart of thought. Dr. Holloway leaned forward. And this? Lyra, she told you this? She didn't just tell me, he said. She proved it. She saved me. And she destroyed the weapon before they could use it. Rains frowned. You expect us to believe an alien, one of them, sacrificed herself for you? Evan met his gaze. I don't care what you believe, Commander. I was there. Silence filled the room. The hum of the ship's engines felt louder now, steady and distant. Holloway broke the silence first. What happened to the relic? Evan stared down at the table. Gone, she used it to stop them. Whatever it was, it's dust now. Rains exchanged a glance with the doctor. Then we'll send a retrieval team to confirm. Until then, you're to remain on board. Evan's hands tightened. You don't understand. If you send anyone near that valley, you'll wake what's left of it. The thing wasn't a weapon, it was alive. Rains gave a dry smile. Then we'll study it carefully. The decision that night, Evan couldn't sleep. He sat by the viewport of his assigned quarters, watching stars drift by. The shard of Lyra's armor lay on the desk, glowing faintly in the dark. He turned it over in his hand. It pulsed once, twice, and then flickered with a soft blue light. For a moment he thought he heard her voice again, quiet and far away. They will come, Evan. The war hasn't ended. It has only changed shape. He looked out at the stars again. Somewhere out there, the Varn fleet was regrouping, and somewhere deeper still, something older than both species might be waking. Evan stood and opened the communications console. He typed fast, eyes burning from exhaustion, fingers trembling slightly. He composed a report, not for the commanders, but for humanity itself. Message, classified, highest priority. To all human fleets, colonies, and listening stations, this is Corporal Evan Cole, survivor of the Trident crash. The Varn Empire has been searching for a relic called the Heart of Thought. It can shape energy using consciousness, turn ideas into destruction. They tried to control it. It destroyed them. The relic is not a weapon. It's something older, maybe even sentient. If we try to rebuild it, we will suffer the same fate. Remember this name. Lyra, she was Varn, but she chose mercy when her people chose power. She gave her life to stop a war neither of our kinds could win. Don't let her sacrifice be wasted. End the hunt. Evan Cole, he sat back and read it again. His throat tightened. Then he pressed send. The whisper of ghosts, a soft chime, echoed through the room. Transmission complete, he expected relief. Instead, he felt something colder, the weight of knowing he had just defied his own commanders. He stared at the shard again. Its glow pulsed faster now, like a heartbeat. Then, to his shock, it projected a faint image, a ghost of light above his palm. It was Lyra, not solid, not alive, a memory, a recording. Her voice was soft, her tone gentle. If you see this, Evan, it means the heart kept a piece of me. The energy binds to what it touches. I am part of it now, part of the planet, part of you. Evan's breath caught. I told you once that peace isn't a place, she continued. Maybe now you understand it's a choice. One that must be made every day. The image flickered. If your people seek the relic again, they will find the Varn waiting. But if they seek peace, they may yet find me. The light faded, leaving the shard cold again. Evan sat there for a long time, staring at his reflection in the glass. You never stopped fighting, did you? He whispered. The new war. 2 days later, alarms rang across the Vanguard. The fleet's long-range sensors had picked up movement, hundreds of Varn ships entering human space. Commander Rains stormed into the command deck, barking orders. All ships prepare for engagement. We end this before they reach the colonies. Evan stood near the viewport, silent. He could see the enemy formation on the tactical display, a vast red swarm of light. But something was different this time. The Varn ships weren't firing. They were broadcasting. A single signal pulsed through every channel, repeating the same word. Truce. The room went quiet. Rains turned toward Evan, suspicion hardening in his eyes. You know something about this, don't you? Evan hesitated. Maybe, he said. Or maybe the war's finally over. Legacy of fire hours later, the fleet stood still, waiting. No shots fired. No engines flaring for battle. Just two sides staring at each other across the void. Human blue and Varn crimson. Then through the static, a new voice broke across the comms. Calm. Familiar. It was Lyra. Not a ghost this time. Not a recording, but something alive, transformed. Her voice was carried by the same strange energy that had destroyed the valley. Humans, she said. Varn, you both bled enough. The heart of thought remembers. It watches, and it will not allow another war to wake it. Evan's chest tightened. He couldn't speak. Rains looked at him, pale. Is that her? He nodded. It's what's left of her. Lyra's voice filled the silence again. This universe is wide enough for both of us, if we choose to stop fearing what we don't understand. Evan made that choice. So can you. And then the transmission ended. The promise of tomorrow, the fleets withdrew. The war stopped. Not because either side won, but because both finally saw what they stood to lose. Months later, Evan stood on the observation deck of a new research outpost orbiting the scarred planet. The windless world below shimmered faintly where the relic had once pulsed. He opened his hand, looking at the shard one last time. It no longer glowed, but somehow he could still feel her presence, quiet, patient, watching. He smiled faintly. You got your piece, Lyra. Maybe we all did. He placed the shard into a containment case marked Memorial Artifact 01, Lyra of Varn, then turned to leave. Outside the viewport, the stars burned brighter than before, as if the universe itself had taken a deep breath.